Hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today about the African Phenology Network and our work towards coordinated phenology monitoring in Africa. I am Bismark, Ofosu Bamfo. I work here at the University of Energy and Natural Resources in Ghana. Here I am affiliated with the Department of Basic and Applied Biology and also at the Center for Research in Applied Biology. In 2018, at the start of my PhD on ecology of lianes, my mentor suggested that I consider looking at phenology of lianes as part of my study. At that time, I was only interested in factors that drive distribution and ecology of plants, and I did not have any interest in staying at one thing like phenology and monitoring it over a long period of time. I would rather prefer to travel to multiple locations and conduct a one-off study. And so based on that suggestion, I began to look into phenology and to begin to read about phenology monitoring. At that time, I was scarcely familiar with the term phenology. And so I began an online search and I realized that there was a lot of information on this, especially in the temperate climate zone, where a number of years of data collection had already gone on. And when I zeroed my search to Africa, narrowed down to Africa, that was when I came across the African Phenology Network. And so I was interested to see what kind of studies had gone on in Africa. They were not as much as what had happened in temperate zones, and most of the places had 2 years, 1 year of data, except for places like Gabon, where as much as over 30 years of data was available. So all of this was quite interesting and dumbfounding for me. And so I began to look at what had been done and continue to pick interest in there. Before I proceed, let me take time to explain what phenology is. Phenology is basically the timing of life cycle events. If you are looking at time of fruiting, time of flowering, time of leaf production, or time of leaf fall in plants, time of migration, time of reproduction in animals, all that constitutes phenology monitoring. And it involves monitoring to establish a pattern and then also trying to understand the drivers behind those patterns. What are the drivers? What are the factors that trigger the occurrence of these events? And phenology correlates closely with climate patterns. So you observe that a lot of these events take place alongside changes in the patterns of weather, which then makes phenology a very good way and a very simple and easy way to really determine, to really provide evidence for climate change, if I may say. So back to my story, I continued to read a lot more on what was happening in other places, and I came across all these other phenology networks like USA National Phenology Network, like the European Phenological Network, and the Phenocam networks, and also organizations like Season Watch India that were providing coordination for phenology monitoring, coordinating phenology monitoring in their respective countries and continents. And I realized that it didn't look like there was something comparative. We do not have a lot of national networks in Africa, and it also didn't look like the science of phenology in Africa was very prominent. Now, the advantage of having a coordinated phenology network is that you're able to promote the study of phenology. You're able to make it more popular. You are able to make phenology studies take place in once a coordinated manner. It can be sustained over a long period of time and can also be replicated across multiple sites, as is evident in Europe with the Global Phenology Monitoring Program. And so the other thing that was also interesting was the engagement of citizens in phenology monitoring. And that is something that may already be happening in Africa, but we need to coordinate this and also find a way to document it. And it's something that many of us may already be doing. Take, for example, this fig tree in my neighborhood that is really on the road that I used to work every day. In September 2021, September 8th, I noticed that this fig had lost all its leaves and at the same time also started to produce fruit buds, and also at the same time there were new leaf buds that had formed. And so when I made that observation, I automatically assumed that, okay, let me just wait and see when in next year this is going to happen again. I had boxed the observation I had made on the fig into the 12-month calendar that I know. And so I said, okay, I'll wait until September next year and see if the same thing happens. Surprisingly, on January 1st this year, 2022, I noticed that the same event started happening. The fig lost its leaves again. New fruit buds began to form at the same time, and new leaves also began to form, leaf buds. So it then occurred to me that, okay, so this event actually happened last 4 months and it's happening again. Then when again is it going to occur? Is this going to be every 4 months, or is it going to be different this time around? And I don't know, I still have to monitor and see what happens. These are the things that phenology helps us to unearth. What are the patterns in the life cycle events of the plants and animals that are here in our environment? So for this particular fig, when it fruits and when it produces flowers, it's visited by Edolum helvum fruit bats who come and feed on it. And so it's providing some service in the ecosystem, it's providing some usefulness in the environment. And so I have to keep monitoring this to see what happens the next time. But more importantly, I need to understand what factors drive these happenings that I am observing. So if you have a plant in your environment, if you're observing a certain pattern in your neighborhood, you are already involved in phenology monitoring. And what is next you have to do is to try and document, find a way to document these observations. So about the same time, I noticed that in a forest I had visited just about 2 days to Christmas, a week earlier to this observation I had made, I noticed that another fig tree was also fruiting in a forest, in a moist semi-deciduous forest further down south from where I live, which is a dry semi-deciduous forest in the forest savanna transition zone. This was fruiting 1 week earlier. Why was this the case? That is something that phenology helps us to investigate. In the place where there is a lot of rainfall, fruiting was earlier. In the place where there is less rainfall, fruiting was late. Is this to suggest that if rainfall pattern changes in the dry area, should we expect the fruiting in the fig to change again? What is going to happen? If we stay at these observations over the long haul, we would be able to tell the changes that are taking place and to also tell whether these changes that are taking place are because of changes in climate or changes in the pattern of rainfall or temperature or humidity or anything. Why is this kind of monitoring important at all? Why should we be concerned about phenology monitoring in Africa? In the instance of the fig, I mentioned the fruit bats coming to visit and then to feed on the fig. Monitoring phenology reveals the interactions that take place among living organisms, plant-insect interactions, for example, and the dispersal agents of many plants that we do not know. All of that can be revealed when we monitor their phenology. And that is important in itself, but beyond that, the products that are offered as a result of those interactions, interactions are what is important to us as humans, right? As a result of plant-insect interactions, you have pollination, fertilization happening, and then we get the fruits that some humans will use for food and some animals also will feed on. And as a result of dispersal, you have these seeds taken to other places and colonizing new environments, and therefore ensuring sustainable supply of these essential products. Again, if you talk about availability of essential plant products, some leaves and some seeds are used for medicinal purposes. And if you monitor phenology, we can track the sustainable supply of these essential plant products. In this paper, Cunningham et al. In 2021, they were reporting about the decline in the seeds of Griffonia simplicifolia, which is the source of 5-hydroxytryptophan and antidepressant in high demand in China and in the US. And this is not a plant that is cultivated. The seeds are collected in the wild. And sometimes when I am on the field taking data on lianas, you see people walking in the forest, looking on the forest floor, looking for these seeds to pick and then go and sell. Now, this liana fruits between August and January, but without phenology monitoring, we are not going to know the levels, right? Are they still fruiting in the same capacity? Has fruiting declined? And what does this mean for the various uses that humans derive from them? Monitoring phenology helps us to monitor the food source for animals and for humans. In this study, Bush et al. Observed that the physical condition of elephants had declined over a 30-year period. And that same 30-year period, there was also a decline in fruit tree availability in the forest where, in the habitat of these elephants in Gabon. And so that means that now if the elephants need to roam a lot more before they can get food that is important. In another study in Rwanda, Matthew et al. Observed that the feeding behavior of primates had some relation with the load of parasites in the primates, and that depended on the kind of leaf that the primates were feeding on, which then leads us to discovery of new natural products that are essential for human well-being. And all of these are some of the important derivatives or services that we get as a result of phenology monitoring. Talking again about food scarcity, this study here, which is part of Heavy's PhD and also reflected in the paper by Bush et al., realized that food scarcity is one of the factors that is contributing to escalating human-wildlife conflict, right? If they roam the natural habitat and they don't find food, they will need to cross over to where there are farmlands and then raid those farmlands, and it increases conflict, potential for conflict between humans and wildlife. Again, monitoring phenology is a way for us to really provide evidence for climate change. If in the instance of the fig tree, I've observed fruiting deciduousness happening on 8 September, observed again in 1st January. If next year, in this year, these things change again, either they are becoming late or occurring earlier, it's an indication that something may be happening that must be investigated. And this may be evidence, this may provide evidence that indeed we have climate change taking place, and that evidence will then inform the kind of policy we need to put in place in order to successfully adapt to changing climate. So imagine the applications when you are looking at sectors like cocoa, cashew production, and other cash crops and food crops that African communities depend on. So what has been happening when it comes to phenology monitoring in Africa? A good amount of phenology work has gone on, but what has been lacking is coordination at the national and continental scale. And that is the reason why African Phenology Network is here to provide that needed coordination. In Cote d'Ivoire, there was a Thai chimpanzee project that started in 1997. In Gabon, the number of trees have been monitored monthly since 1984. And in DR Congo, some phenology work had gone on in the Bwindi National Park since 2004. We can talk about what has been going on since 1998 by the Jane Goodall Institute in Tanzania. And in Kenya, some work went on in Impala from 1998 to 2011 that appears to have stalled. In Ghana, I'm currently leading the Liana Phenology project, which I started in 2020, monitoring the phenology of lianas in dry semideciduous and moist semideciduous forests. So all of this work has been going on. There are a number of others I couldn't cite. They have happened in like they have happened maybe for a year or for 2 years, and then they were suspended. But phenology makes the most sense and is most useful. It's useful for predictions, useful for ecological forecasting if this were continuous for quite some time, say from 6 years onwards, then we can begin to tell what the drivers are and establish patterns and begin to investigate what the underlying factors are. And so if it goes on for 2 years, it's not so useful. And so coordinated networks can help us maintain this monitoring, sustained monitoring for a long time. When we have a coordinated network, these shortfalls that are presently faced by phenology monitoring in Africa, such as the lack of coordination, not being able to sustain them, having methods not being standardized, the slow pace of adopting new technologies, and the limited political will, all of that could be faced off and dealt with when we have a coordinated network. And so for these reasons, the African Phenology Network was formed. And this was towards the end of Dr. Emma Bush's PhD. She had a discussion with her supervisor, Kate, about this kind of gap. And so that was when the African Phenology Network was formed. And in 2020, a number of us came together to be part of the steering committee. Myself, Eve Memiege as Nata Dienge were invited by Emma to join the steering committee. And in 2021, we won a grant from the Royal Society of Edinburgh ahead of the COP26 to strengthen our network. What are the aims of this network? We aim to support research collaborations in Africa, and also we aim to support such collaborations, South-South collaborations and North-South collaborations. Our aim again is to widen access and establish new methods, and also to grow leadership in phenology in Africa and to provide ecological evidence. If you look at the position of Africa, we have different ecosystem types, right from the Guinea savanna all the way down to the Upper Guinean forest, Lower Guinean forest, to the Congo Basin forest, and then the Miombo type of forest again. So that really gives us the opportunity to have different phenology sites dotted across Africa, large scale, an advantage of having a large scale phenology monitoring project. And if we can have this go on for some time, then we can present solid evidence on the impact of climate change on tropical forests, on fruit trees that wildlife will use as food for communities. And this evidence will better position us to take steps that enable us to adapt and be better positioned to avoid the adverse effects of climate change. If we have multi-sites that can really make up for the time, we may not have the number of years that other phenology networks have behind them. But if we have multiple species with presenting different climate scenarios, that can make up for the time and will provide very useful evidence. If a network, coordinated network, can help us promote the science of phenology in Africa and help facilitate adoption by state agencies. If we are able to present strong evidence that these patterns are changing along with climate change, provide strong evidence. And if we have this coordinated network, we'll be able to standardize protocols across sites and make these protocols widely available. And it will also be easy to facilitate adoption of new methods. So this will give us a higher leverage in engaging policymakers with the science. We can generate data products that provide forecasts on events that are going to happen, how tropical forests are going to respond to future climate scenarios. Those forecasts can be provided when you have a network that is coordinating large-scale, multi-site, long-term phenology monitoring. And that will help us understand the cycle of events in Africa. Unlike the temperate zone, everything ends with winter. here, and then begins with the spring. Here in Africa, in tropical forests, I should say, the patterns are the same. Some plants have a cycle of 18 months, 24 months, and the fig that I have made reference to a number of times perhaps has a cycle of 4 months. So these patterns are different for these tropical species, and we need to understand, establish those patterns and understand the drivers behind them and the implications for these patterns. Should they be delayed or should they be advanced? What are the implications when there are mismatches between plant-animal interactions? That means we may lose the services that these interactions are providing. So to help us achieve these aims, what we have tried to do is to establish an online presence. Prior to the grant funding, we had begun some work, and then the funding came in to help us to establish some of these things. So we have established an online presence. We have here the website that you can visit, has translations in French as well. And we also have, you can also follow us here on Twitter. What we have also done is to publish web manuals and instructional videos that provide instructions for anyone that is about to begin work in phenology monitoring, so that you can go online, have access to these instructional videos and manuals, and use mobile data forms. Mobile data forms, if they are designed with, if you use Kobo Collect or ODK, they can be designed to be intelligent and provide you with escape logic and even prompts to take pictures of observations. And this makes it easy to collect phenology data. That is what I use in Ghana. It's also being used in the Kenya agroforestry project on phenology of moringa. And so we also had seminar series as part of the grant that we had. We had a number of seminar series last year. We also had the opportunity to pilot the use of phenocams for phenology monitoring, and we also conducted an online survey. The seminars, the first of the seminars was on, you can find the seminars on our YouTube channel, African Phenology Network. The first of the seminars was on African perspectives on phenology monitoring. We had some presentations from the Gabon super site, and where monitoring has gone on for close to 30 years or more. And also I shared perspectives and from my experience setting up a phenology site in Ghana. And we also had presentations from partners in Kenya. Then we had the lessons from International Phenology Networks, where Dr. Teresa Cremens from the USA National Phenology Network shared her experience coordinating the work of USA and PN with us. We had Dr. Jita Ramaswamy from Season Watch India also share their experience coordinating the citizen science projects of Season Watch India. And we had a chance to learn some lessons from the experiences that they have coordinating these huge networks for many years. Then the third workshop, we shared about the findings from the initial piloting of the phenocams, and the final workshop was a way to consolidate all the lessons that we had gained from the project and also present findings on the online survey, the perspectives of African scientists, practitioners on phenology monitoring in Africa. And so in the piloting of the phenocam, a number of key lessons that came in here was in relation to mobilizing the cameras, procurement, hosting them. All of that takes a lot of time, and sometimes they could be held by customs, import duties may be required. Here in Ghana, I had to pay about £180 for 3 cameras, and that was quite high. And setting up the cameras also, you would ideally need places where you have flax towers, and the site where I was using in Ghana for the piloting did not have that. So we had to engage a tree climber to help us put the camera there up in the branch of an emergent. And the choice of the tree, the location, the right angle. If you don't get a good location, rather than having a view that overlooks the canopy and gives you a wide horizontal stretch across the plane of the forest canopy, you rather get something vertical, as in this picture. And so you are not able to get a good picture of what is happening at the ecosystem level. And so if there are places where there are flag towers that the cameras can be attached to, that is ideal. I put this second camera here near my university campus where there is a bat colony, and that tree was also not high enough, so I could not get an angle that overlooks the canopy. So having a tower in place is ideal. If that is not available, then it's best to then look for an emergent tree, a real emergent tree, and then put it there. For the online survey that we rolled out, we had about 38 responses from 22 African nations. Most of them were active participants in phenology or familiar with the field of phenology, and also in forest ecosystems. And when asked the importance, why phenology monitoring is important, biodiversity conservation came up first, and ecosystem services and climate adaptation were the top 3 reasons for phenology monitoring. Others were human-wildlife coexistence, importance for agriculture, for human well-being, and for economic factors. When asked who should be responsible for phenology monitoring, our respondents indicate that they think that academic researchers, and I should mention that a lot of the respondents were people in academia. We didn't have a lot of people from the government or policy end. So many of them indicated academic researchers should lead, and followed by international research networks, and government and NGOs were the others that were suggested. So interestingly, some were of the opinion that citizens should lead phenology work, indigenous people should be enrolled in phenology work. And that is also one of the things we picked from Season Watch India, where even young people as young as 12 years old are part of those that are collecting phenology information. Barriers to phenology monitoring included funding, challenges, paying salaries if it's a research institution, if it's a project, and you have to pay people, pay salaries so people can stay on monitoring projects. And if the project ends, they will definitely have to move on to another place. So sustained funding is important. And logistics, cameras, binoculars, tax, all of that are important and could pose as barriers. And then knowledge could also be a barrier, and the lack of political support also seen as a barrier to phenology monitoring in Africa. And here we were looking at how respondents were familiar with the different methods of phenology monitoring. A good number of people, up to 37 people, were familiar with direct observation from the ground using binoculars, looking into the canopy, and up to 25 people had used this method. A good number of people, 34, familiar with automatic camera, but only 8 people had used this. The flag tower, most interesting, up to 24 people were familiar, but only 1 person had used the flag tower. And if we can position cameras well, we need flag towers, or at least some poles in place so we can position them well. Others that were common and familiar included use of remote sensing and from satellites, and also remote sensing using drones. So from this survey, we realized that the constituents of the African Phenology Network, people involved in phenology monitoring in Africa, were mainly academics. And we also realized that the focus for phenology monitoring in terms of building capacity include the mobilizing funding, standardizing methods, increasing training and access to technical field methods, and also the need to reach out to and engage with policymakers. And those were some of the people we could not reach with our survey. So it really suggests that there is a gap that needs to be bridged. So going forward, ways in which others can contribute to our work. If there are any phenology sites that we have missed, we have not been able to capture, we will be happy to get that information and post them on our website so that it makes it easy for coordination. It makes it easy for anyone that is interested in data from that area to reach out to the researchers or the authors of the data in that place. There is the need for app development for citizen science projects in Africa. We could begin with something like Fruit Watch, Mango Watch, keeping track of the phenology of important fruit trees across Africa that provide nutrition for the masses. That is something that is very important for us. We could begin with that. App development is then essential in there. And if there are suggestions on grant calls for networks and networks like ours, we are open to such alerts so we can put in an application. And we are open to collaborations with similar networks. If you are doing something on phenology in Africa, you can share your experience by writing as a blog. We already have a number of blog articles. Here is one I wrote, tips on setting up a new phenology research project. Hervé wrote this, wild fruit scarcity and its role in human-wildlife conflict. We had Asinat writing this one on contributions of moringa to livelihood in Kenya, and fruit farming and hungry elephants in Gabon are a number of blog articles that you can read to inform yourself. You can please follow us on Twitter at African Phenonet or visit our website to receive updates on our activities, seminars, workshops. You can send a blank email here, African Phenology Network mailing list /subscribe@googlegroups.com. You could also send us an email here at African Phenology Network @gmail. Our survey is still open. We will compile this into a policy brief and share with policymakers and engage them on the final outcome of our research. So if you have not taken our survey yet and you work on phenology monitoring in Africa, I encourage that you please take the survey. Our current leadership is made up of early career researchers. We have the steering committee chaired by Dr. Emma Bush, who is with the Royal Botanical Garden in Edinburgh, Asinat Adienge with the Kenya Forestry Research Institute in Kenya. Kevin Miege is with IRED, Gabon, and he is also pursuing his PhD in University of Oregon in the US. And I am also a member of the steering committee, Bismark. And my PhD I'm pursuing my PhD also in Ghana, which is on the phenology and ecology of lianes. Thank you very much for your time and your attention. I look forward to the discussions that will follow. Thank you.